Hello and welcome to another episode of Ash Recaps. Today I'm going to recap a romance-adventure film from 1980 called The Blue Lagoon. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, relax, and enjoy the video. As the movie begins, we are shown a family on a ship sailing to San Francisco. 9 years old Richard and 7 years old Emmeline are sailing with Richard's father. Richard and Emmeline are cousins. While the ship's cook Paddy Button is away, Richard and Emmeline enter Paddy's quarters and discover some revealing pictures of women. Paddy apprehends and punishes them. However, the ship suddenly catches fire, forcing Paddy to take the children to a lifeboat. Richard's father, who is escaping in another lifeboat, is separated from the children. Everyone manages to sail away from the ship, but they become disoriented due to the heavy smoke from the explosion. Paddy, Richard and Emmeline have become stranded in the middle of the ocean without food or water. Emmeline awakens one morning to discover a lovely island. Paddy is overjoyed to see the island and quickly sails the boat there. Paddy doesn't waste any time and sets out to explore the island. They eventually find clean drinking water and food. They discover a can of rum after further exploration. In the meantime, Richard discovers a human skull with holes in it. Paddy senses something is wrong and departs. Emmeline pops some berries into her mouth while they search for other boats. Paddy informs her that the berries are poisonous and orders her to spit them out. They decide to seek refuge near the shore in the hopes of being rescued. Time passes and they remain trapped on the island. Paddy teaches the kids how to catch fish, build a shed, and many other things. Paddy is drinking rum when he hears strange noises coming from the other side of the island. Paddy goes to inspect the location the next morning and discovers some meat on a rock. Paddy returns to the shore after realizing something is wrong. Paddy makes Richard and Emmeline promise not to wander to the other side of the island. At night, Paddy becomes inebriated after drinking rum from the can. One night he falls asleep near the fire after dancing with the children. He gets up early in the morning and swims drunk to the other side of the island. Richard and Emmeline search for Paddy the next morning. They take the boat to get to him and discover that Paddy is no longer alive. The kids are terrified after seeing his dead body. Emmeline wants to leave because she no longer feels comfortable living there. So they load their belongings onto the boat and sail to another island. They follow all of Paddy's instructions and gather a lot of food, build a shed, and try to survive. They've grown up a lot in that time. They learned how to survive on the island after years of living there. They spend the majority of their time collecting food. They've built a shed and made the island their home. They have grown physically, but they are still the same Richard and Emmeline who arrived on the island years ago. They are noticing physical changes in their bodies and are unable to comprehend them. One day, Emmeline discovers blood in the water while swimming and immediately calls Richard, but she soon discovers that the blood was leaking from her body. She is having her period for the first time and is completely unaware of it. Richard offers to assist her, but Emmeline orders him to leave. Later, Richard inquires about the bleeding with Emmeline, and she says she doesn't know. Richard wants to examine her body for any cuts that may have caused the bleeding, but Emmeline won't let him. Richard is furious with her for not sharing her secrets with him and storms out. Emmeline is smitten by Richard and can't take her gaze away from him. Richard is still distraught over Paddy's death and wishes to know how he died. One night, Richard and Emmeline hear a strange drumming sound coming from the island they left. Richard is also attracted to Emmeline, whom he sees naked swimming in the sea. Emmeline hears the drumming sound again and goes to investigate. She climbs to the top of the island to figure out where the noise is coming from. Emmeline investigates the location and discovers a massive rock sculpture. She notices blood oozing from the sculpture. She runs back to the shed terrified and tells Richard everything. Emmeline believes the sculpture is a god, but Richard forbids her from returning. Emmeline has a dream one night while sleeping, in which Richard eats the poisonous red berries and drowns in the water. She awakens and tells Richard that he must promise her that he will never abandon her. Richard makes a promise to her and they kiss. He also tries to mate with her, but Emmeline intervenes and walks away. Richard begins touching Emmeline later that night while she was sleeping. Emmeline awakens and orders him to leave. When Emmeline attempts to speak with Richard the next morning, he ignores her. Emmeline checks on Richard and notices him enjoying himself. Richard is experiencing an unfamiliar sensation and is powerless to resist it. Emmeline tries to talk to him, but he refuses. One day, Richard sees a ship in the ocean and rushes back to the shed to light the signal fire. Emmeline notices the ship but decides not to light the signal fire. Richard is furious at her for failing to light the signal and flees on a boat he built himself, but the ship sinks and Richard swims back to the shore. Emmeline mocks him for attempting to flee the island and tells him that the island is now their home. She also informs him that she is aware of what he has been up to with his thing recently. Richard is furious at her for spying on him and throws a coconut at her. He then makes fun of her body, which enrages Emmeline. She throws a coconut which lands on Richard's head. Richard slaps her and throws away all of her belongings from their home which he built himself. Emmeline must therefore remain alone and seek refuge in a nearby rock. She goes to place flowers on the sculpture one day, considering it to be a god. On her way back, she steps on a poisonous fish. Richard goes to check on her and discovers that Emmeline is ill as a result of the poison. She requests Richard to take her to God. As a result, Richard transports her through the forest to the sculpture. Richard begs the sculpture to help Emmeline recover. Emmeline eventually recovers, and Richard confesses his feelings for her. He assists Emmeline in returning to the shore, and the two begin spending time together. One day they mate after kissing each other. They are finally able to understand their feelings and are content to be together. They begin spending time together and cherish every moment spent together. Time passes quickly, and Richard and Emmeline are content on the island. Emmeline becomes ill one day, and later that night, when Richard tries to kiss her, she stops him. Richard asks her if she still loves him, but Emmeline says that it hurts when they do it. She has no idea why this is happening and claims that something is inside her stomach. Richard places his hand on her belly and feels something move. Neither of them know what is going on with Emmeline or whether she is okay. After a few months, Richard hears a drumming sound from a distance and rushes to the location. When he arrives, he notices some indigenous people performing a ritual in front of the sculpture, in which they sacrifice a man to their god. Richard is terrified and returns to the shore. He hears Emmeline scream in agony as she goes into labor. Emmeline gives birth to a baby boy whom they name Paddy. They give birth despite knowing nothing about pregnancy. They try to feed the baby with fruits and water because they have no idea what to feed the baby. Emmeline holds the baby in her arms and unknowingly breastfeeds him. Later, Richard tells Emmeline about the indigenous people and warns her not to return to the other side of the island. Since Richard and Emmeline are cut off from the outside world, so they are unable to comprehend why people do bad things to one another. Richard returns to the island and discovers Paddy's skeleton. He attempts to learn about the human body structure. Richard and Emmeline are in love and want nothing else in their lives. One day, Emmeline teaches the baby to swim. Time passes and the baby grows up and learns to swim. They are happy together on the island and always spend their time playing together. A few days later, Richard's father arrives on his ship to the island. While they were playing near the shore, Richard and Emmeline notice the boat but choose not to call for assistance because they are content on the island. As they are covered in mud, so it is difficult to tell who they are, and Richard's father believes they are not Richard and Emmeline. The family returns to the old island one day because Emmeline wishes to see it one more time. Richard goes in search of bananas, leaving Emmeline and Paddy in charge of the boat. They discover their old belongings and reminisce about their time there. When Emmeline is looking elsewhere, Paddy picks a branch of the red poisonous berries and places it in the boat. Emmeline and Paddy were waiting for Richard on the boat, when suddenly Paddy threw one of the paddles out of the boat, and the boat slowly drifts away. Emmeline, unable to reach the paddle, calls out to Richard, who swims over to her, but then a shark appears out of nowhere and chases Richard. Emmeline throws the other paddle at the shark, and Richard makes it to the boat. The family drifts away from the sea into the ocean without the paddles. The current is too strong for Richard and Emmeline to reach the paddles. They drifted far from the island and are now stranded in the sea. Richard and Emmeline awaken after drifting for days, only to find Paddy eating the poisonous berries. Emmeline tries to keep the baby awake because the berries have made him sick. Realizing there's no hope for them, Richard and Emmeline eat the poisonous berries and die. They embrace each other one last time before lying down to die. Richard's father notices the boat and sails quickly towards it. When he arrives at the boat, he sees Richard, Emmeline, and Paddy. Are they dead? Richard's father inquires, to which the captain responds, "No, sir, they're fast asleep," which means that the berries were poisonous but not fatally so. and the movie ends here. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, then give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to watch more videos like this, then don't forget to subscribe the channel and click the bell icon to turn on notifications. We'll see you with another amazing video soon. Take care and goodbye.